So for everybody tuning in, my name is Farooq Al-Said. I'm the director of operations of One Hood. We are a Pittsburgh-based national nonprofit that rests at the intersection of arts, education, and activism. Um, this is going to kind of cover just community organizing through a lot of different facets and what it looks like. And I was just kind of giving just like a quick rundown of Pittsburgh. You didn't really miss anything super important. But what community organizing, I think, looks like to a lot of people is people think community organizers, because of CNN and Fox News and all of these things, we're like these local celebrities and we receive all this money and we get all these grants and we're riding around in Benzes and buying really expensive shit. And that's just kind of like, that's the top 1% of anything. You know what I mean? And community organizing is probably the least glamorous and most stressful occupation you could take in the form of activism, because people start relying on you. And the moment you realize in community organizing that you're good and not lucky, that's kind of the most difficult realization that you come to, because it's, in my opinion, it's better to be lucky than good, because that's when people start expecting shit from you, is when you're good, because you can produce the same shit over and over and over again. And that's kind of been the gift and the curse of what we do at One Hood. And I'll get into that in a little bit. When I said, though, I didn't see myself in the activism role, is because I have a very unique backstory. And I'm learning, the older I get, the more unique it is. Whereas I used to just downplay it. My mom got political asylum from Lebanon. And my father I didn't find this out until a lot later in my life, was an illegal immigrant from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, who joined the Black Panthers. So I was kind of born into activism by default, and I never really thought much about it. I was always outspoken. I was always, kind of involved in dealing with my core group of friends in a communal aspect, but never really saw myself as an activist. Like, I grew up with the teachings of like Malcolm and Marcus and, Fred Hampton and Huey Newton, right? Because my dad was in the Panthers. But that idea of activism and community organizing always kind of eluded me. It just seemed like it was more trouble than it was worth. Just, when I was younger, right? And, I got locked up and found myself in a role even when I was in jail, as people would come to me about things. And mind you, I was only 17 when I was in jail. And people would come to me to advocate in certain situations. And I always thought found that quite a bit interesting. Fast forward to, 4 years ago when I joined One Hood, the organization. Jasiri X, the CEO, the co-founder, I've known Jasiri since I moved to Pittsburgh. I've known Jasiri almost a third of my life now. And we've been brothers. I look at Jasiri in the same way I would look at the two brothers that my mom gave me. I don't see him any different. And we disagree like brothers. We get on each other's nerves like brothers. But I seen One Hood in 2006 when it formed, when it was just a group of brothers walking the street trying to eliminate community violence. And people want to talk about black on black crime. People commit crimes in the proximity in which they live. Asians are going to commit Asian on Asian violence. White people are going to commit white on white violence. Black people are going to commit black on black violence. It's just it's just the nature of it. So that's kind of what One Hood started, was in 2006. They were just a group of brothers that was walking the streets trying to eliminate gun violence in the community. I seen it from there. And now here I am as the director of operations, and we transformed into so much more. I'll pause that to talk about specifically the topic of the conversation, which is community organizing from a grassroots to a grass top level. All of us were young at one point. Some of us are still young. Others of us are, youthful. You first experience community organizing, and everybody experiences it pretty much at the same time. When you try to get a pickup game of something happening, whether you're trying to get like a football game, a tag, or something. That's everybody's pretty much first introduction to community organizing. You're either the person who's trying to get people to play the game, or you're the person hoping to get picked on the correct team that suits you at that time. And that's where everybody's first idea of community organizing comes. And you don't think of it like that. You don't think of it as, oh, I'm organizing something. It's just like, we're having fun. I'm galvanizing some of my friends. I'm pulling people together for a like-minded cause. Even if it's as trivial as a game, or if it's like, who wants to do this at recess, whatever, that's your first real introduction to it. And no one thinks of it like that. And that's the way you have to kind of initiate it. It's not until the game starts do you realize how quickly it gets politicized. Well, I don't want to be with Tara because Tara be pushing people when she tags him, right? I don't want to be with Dr. Russell because Dr. Russell, she just be hiding and no one can find her anymore. And then you start realizing that you have identity issues, and you don't assign words to it at that point because you're too young. You just know in your body and in your mind, I don't want to be over there. I want to be here because I fuck with this right now. And this works for me. That's community organizing. Extrapolate that to real political issues with politicians and money and fundraisers and grants and organizations and police officers and community issues and the school board and students and children and adults. Then things start to look really wild. With community organizing as it is, it's always a popularity contest. We've seen probably the largest aspect of community organizing play out on a national scale was with Ferguson. And how many people came to Ferguson and fancied themselves organizers until the tear gas came. And then the handcuffs went on and the zip ties and the rubber bullets. And then people ended up dying and disappearing. Community organizing has become one of the sexiest things in the media right now because Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok made it seem so glamorous. And what happened was people didn't know that there was actually work involved with being a community organizer. Being a community organizer is being an elected official with none of the perks. You don't get a security detail. You rarely ever get a budget. You end up becoming a target. You very rarely truly get to advocate for your community in the way you want to because there's so many politics involved in it. And I'm talking about the negative aspect of community organizing right now. There is an upside to it, but it is very much like being an elected official with none of the perks. Where a mayor or a local prefect, someone who's in charge of their communal district, can always rely on money to assuage a lot of things. Community organizers don't always have that. And we have to rely on other parts and other resources, which tends to be our communal relationships, which is the upside. Our organization in Pittsburgh has kind of emerged as a front, not only a front force for the community in a platform, but also an alternative source of media as we've emerged nationally. That gives us access to more resources to provide the community with. We are what's known as now a grass top organization. We are no longer, even though we do grassroots work is we put our boots on the ground. We go places where the community needs us. If there's a need, if there's a request, we try to meet it. We're there. We're in there with the people. Grass tops, we have resources that we can give to people. If I'm being completely transparent, a man like me is protested out. I did 20 weeks straight of protests in 2020. I'm over protests. I had some things change in my life that made me look at protests completely different. I no longer have to be there, nor do I want to be there. That's no longer my area. My platform has elevated. That's not to mean I won't pop up at a protest. It's just that now I don't have the urge to be there in the way that I was, in the capacity that I was. My organization has the ability now to fiscally sponsor organizations and individuals that is their thing, right? We have the ability to put finances in people's pockets that allow them the platform to create awareness to an issue. And that's where a grass top organization comes in. Our responsibility becomes more than just a specific cause. Now we have an obligation to the community at large. And I think for anybody that was curious or maybe never heard the term grasstop organization or grassroots organization, that doesn't mean one's better than the other. Not at all. It just means we're in different positions. Philanthropy plays a very large role in community organizing. I recall a specific incident when the trial of Michael Rothfeld happened, who was the officer that murdered Antoine Rose II. When that happened, we happened to be the only organization in Pittsburgh that was involved with the case, that not only had a line to Antoine's mom, Miss Michelle Kenny, but had an office. And that's where I am right now. I'm in the One Hood office. We kind of became a hub for all the activists and organizers. And what the community did with philanthropic efforts was they gave us so much shit. We got cases of water, we got food, granola bars, shirts, gift cards, raincoats, goggles for pepper spray, ponchos, all of these things. They just piled up in our office. We actually had to rent another office next door just to put the other shit in. And then all the spillover went to our storage unit. That's what philanthropy can provide on a grassroots level. The community comes out for the community organizations. We took all of that, took it to protest, dropped it there. Identified people who needed it, dropped it there. That's part of community organizing, is identifying where the resources need to go. And if anybody has any questions, please at any point, chime in, because I'll just sit here and just flow. But that's where grassroots community organizing begins, is identifying the issues that affect your community the most and seeing what you can attack easiest. Black and brown communities, we all suffer from the same issue, which is white supremacy. The globe suffers from white supremacy. There's not a country and a planet. There's not an individual on the planet that's not affected by white supremacy. Even if you're white, you're affected by white supremacy. You either benefit from it or you don't. That's just the brass tacks of it. With our aspect of community organizing, we were able to really identify something in Pittsburgh, because the statistics of Pittsburgh are this. As of October 2019, it was the worst city in the country for a Black woman, period. Quality of life, income, education, marriage, infant mortality rates, everything. This is statistically a truth. Pittsburgh is also the worst metropolitan area in the United States of America for working class Black people, as we have the poorest working class Black population in the country. We make up 30% of the city, 13% of the county. Pittsburgh is a pretty Black city, even though 4 Black people leave the city every day. Now, where do you ask if you're not from Pittsburgh? If you're from Pittsburgh and you drive through and you see no Black people, it's because gentrification, which Pittsburgh has become the 8th most gentrified city in the country, and by the end of 2021 will be the 6th most gentrified city in the country, pushes us into areas that you can no longer see us. But trust me, we here. And you find out real quick when you make a couple left turns, it's still a lot of Black people around here. If you go to Tarjay in East Liberty, that was a historically Black neighborhood. So it shouldn't be on the stretch of imagination that you go into Tarjay and you see a lot of Black people there. There's a big difference between the Tarjay in East Liberty and the one in Monroeville. Huge difference in demographics. You're gonna see some niggas in East Liberty. You're not gonna really see that in Monroeville too tough. There's a reason for that. What One Hood was able to do in terms of the community organizing on this grassroots level for the year of 2019 to 2020 was we were able to locate these issues because we knew people in the neighborhoods, of us patrolling these neighborhoods since 2006, us being involved in these community issues since 2006. Our track record allowed us to have these relationships with the community leaders and pillars to say, hey, what's popping at Homewood? Let me ask Amber, right? Or, we need to get into the jails. How can we do that? Well, let's holler at Cornell. What's popping over in Hazelwood? We really don't have a lot of connects over there, but I know some people that work in the community center. Let's jump over to Hazelwood and see what we can do there. Well, what's happening on the Hill? I mean, we all know everybody on the Hill. Let's pop up in there. Let's set up voting booths in the Hill, and let's set up election things. So we identify all these needs because of relationships, and that's where community organizing and politics come together. Politics has a saying: there's no permanent friends, and there's no permanent enemies in politics. Community organizing, it's not that cut and dry. You don't have the luxury of saying, oh, it was just politics, it was just business. Because I have to see you. If we're in the same community, you're going to see me every day. That's the thing about One Hood that makes us very unique as community organizers. Even as we kind of, our brand is elevated, we are very tangible. You can see me at Whole Foods. You can see me at Market District. You can see me at Social Status. I'm in Social Status once a week, easily. One of the two of them, East Liberty or downtown. I'm there. I was just there today. We're accessible as organizers. Politicians, not so much. And what organizers have that politicians don't is that rapport. We don't lose our rapport unless the community deems it so. Our reputation is all we have as community organizers. Politicians, once they get embedded, they're like a tick. Unless they do something egregious, they can pretty much stay in forever. Yeah, large up Social Status downtown, large up a man like Tyler. That's my guy right there. The separation between community organizing at a grassroots level and at a grass top level starts to emerge now when resources become abundant. What a lot of people don't understand is that community organizing is a full-time job, but it doesn't always end up to be a career for people. And I think there's a huge difference. Not everybody, I think now is the fight for 15 and we see all these workers, storming out because they're not being paid equitable wages. We're starting to learn the difference in real time what the difference is between a job and a career. And people tell you, oh, go get a job. Well, my nigga, a job ain't paying my bills. I had a job. It ain't keep my fridge fat. I got a job. My kids are still hungry. And that's what we're looking at in Pittsburgh right now. We're seeing this excessively wide margin in equality and equity as it specifically pertains to Black and brown people. You go out to the Mon Valley, that's one of the poorest areas in the country. That's just right outside of Pittsburgh. It's maybe 25, 30 minutes right outside of Pittsburgh. It's one of the poorest areas in the country. Fucked up out there. I'll be thankful when I be driving through the Mon Valley. I used to teach out there. I'll be thankful. I'm like, man, I'm glad I don't live here. Shit. Like, and I come from a fucked up environment. I'm like, damn, this shit fucked up. What community organizing offers is a gateway, relationships. A lot of the times you'll see community organizers pop up in political campaigns. You'll see them pop up at the mayor's office. You'll see them pop up in other areas. Sometimes that's where keeping it real goes wrong because one or two of us will get in there and be like, yo, let me tell you how white supremacy got all this shit fucked up. And then you don't see us no more. And then some of us will get into there and be like, oh, I'm playing the game. They was Kanye West with the backpack when they got in there. And now they Kanye West with the MAGA hat now that they're involved. When you look at what people come from, sometimes you can't fault them. If you're a capitalist, if you're an idealist, you'd be like, nah, they changed up. Fuck them. Right? I tend to navigate between both of those spaces. I use Kanye as an example because I'm a Kanye stan. In my opinion, Kanye does very little wrong. Very little wrong. Until he starts talking with Donald Trump, Kanye does very little wrong. But I get it. When you get into a lot of these spaces as an organizer, what happens is, and this is with Black people in general, you tend to get isolated. And they'll tell you that you're different, and they'll tell you that you're not like everybody else, and they'll tell you, well, we have opportunities for you over here. And then if you're not careful and you're not guarded and you're not intelligent, you'll get swept up, and the next thing you know, you're talking out against the people that you were supporting or that you stood for. And this is the dynamics and the dichotomy of community organizing. It's a very delicate balance. Because right now, One Hood is the soup du jour of community organizing in Pittsburgh. The grant foundations love us, which they really shouldn't, because we be out here heavy against white supremacy. But they love us. They don't tell us no. The public, by and large, favorably loves us. We just got voted Pittsburgh's People of the Year at the end of 2020. Since they couldn't isolate one of us, they said, hey, the whole group changed the city. That doesn't mean it's going to be like that in 2021. That doesn't mean it's going to be like that in 2022. There's a community organizer who became very famous and then infamous like that. And it was someone's gonna have to help me with his name. He wore the blue vest in Ferguson. Was his D-Ray? D-Ray. D-Ray was from Baltimore, Maryland, and found himself going to Ferguson and taking credit for creating Black Lives Matter. D-Ray got ran out of Ferguson, and they said, if you come back here, there's going to be some bodily harm inflicted upon you. D-Ray used his platform for self-improvement. And I'm not mad at him. He seen an opportunity and he took it. I got to respect the hustle. Scam today before today scam me. That's the motto, right? Beyonce followed him on Instagram. D-Ray showed people what community organizing can do if you have a personality attached to it. So everybody thought D-Ray spoke up for all community organizers across the country. And then he made that wild statement that Planet of the Apes was about him, that they made a monkey look like him. It's like, bro, like, if that's not a narcissistic delusion of grandeur, then I don't know what is. And I'm a pretty arrogant person. I was like, bro, you reaching on that. And then he ran for mayor of Baltimore. And that didn't end up well. And what's he doing now? Advertisements for blue vests. He fell out of favor very quickly. Had he had said, I cannot take credit for Black Lives Matter, that was Alicia, Opal, and Patricia. These sisters created this. I know Opal pretty well. I don't know the other two sisters, but I know Opal pretty well. He wouldn't have fallen out of favor with the community at large, with the Black community at large. Where organizing comes into it. I'm not a general. Jasiri is the general. I'm a lieutenant at best. I've never aspired to lead. I don't like the responsibility that leadership comes with. So when Tara calls me a community leader, I appreciate that. I recognize that a lot of people look at me in those lights. I am not a great leader. I am a good upper management person. I think that's where, I've never wanted to organize and run and manipulate shit on that level. But here I am. What organizing in this level can do is it can allow you a medium to really hear what your community is aching from. And our mantra at One Hood, our motto rather, it's not even a mantra, it's just really what we live by. We let the people who are affected the most speak the loudest. And that would be my biggest advice to anybody that gets into community organizing is I can't show up for LGBTQIA issues and speak because it doesn't affect me. I'm a cisgendered Black man. I can't tell you about LGBTQI oppression. I got a gay brother, but I don't live his life. He can come out and speak, and I support and stand in solidarity. I was just asked to speak at the University of Northern Arizona, which I was actually supposed to be tonight, but some things happened. They asked me to speak out about Latinx issues. I had to tell the university, like, yo, listen, I'm not Latinx. I could pass and I could speak Spanish, but I can't come out here and authentically speak about Latinx issues. You have to bring someone to this to this talk with me, and we can split the time. Let the people who are affected the most speak the loudest. That's where the first part of community organizing comes. A lot of people want to be idiocentric in community organizing. Well, I'm here, so I'm in this space and I should command the attention. No, that's not how it goes. When Pittsburgh became the worst city in America for Black women to live, the first thing we did organizationally was get every Black woman with a voice and say, hey, we got to amplify your message right now. That's the number one thing we have to do. We have to amplify these Black women's messages. We went and hired Miracle Jones, who's our political and advocacy director, who just passed the bar. That was probably my favorite thing we've done as an organization, because Miracle has become and emerged as a superstar in Pittsburgh when it comes to activism, specifically for Black women, specifically for queer Black women. I can't speak on those issues. I can just show up in solidarity for my sister. Now, if you want to talk about immigration and black issues like that, yeah, sign me up. I'll be there. I'll speak, because that affects me. And that's where community organizing, a lot of people have it fucked up, is because we are not ideocentric as organizers. We cannot be. That completely defeats the purpose of community. If you place the I before the community, then you got the whole shit fucked up. You get me? That's not how that's supposed to work. Community organizing at a grassroots level, it really should be everybody come out for every issue, because we put our boots on the ground, and as a community we galvanize, we appear in solidarity, and we come out for these issues. Community organizing in reality, the grassroots level, doesn't look like that. And that's the unfortunate truth of it. And I'm going to speak very candidly right now. We have an intimate group, and I'm okay with that. When the New Zealand mosque murderer went on a spree, I was still in Australia teaching at the University of Sydney. And I was like, oh shit, I'm leaving the next day to go back to the States. So this is going to be a wild flight. It's going to be wild. That same time, the protests around the Michael Rothfeld trial, the officer who killed Antoine Rose II, were happening. One Hood was asked to speak at a solidarity event to kind of bring an understanding from both communities about hurt at the Soldiers and Sailors Hall in Oakland, which is in Pittsburgh. That was the first time Jasiri and I ever found out, me being, a Sunni Muslim, Jasiri being a former minister of the Nation of Islam, found out that Pittsburgh had a CAIR organization. And CAIR, C-A-I-R, is the Center for African and Islamic Relations, American Islamic Relations, something like that. They had never reached out to a Black organization in Pittsburgh before that date. We didn't even know Pittsburgh had a chapter. I say that to be transparent about this. Everything that's happening in Palestine right now, I'm half Arab and I'm half Black. The largest silence that we had when Black people were being murdered and prosecuted in the streets of Pittsburgh, when during COVID, we jumped from being 6 times more likely to be arrested as Black people in the country or in the city to 9 times more likely to be locked up and incarcerated during COVID. The largest silence we had was from the Arab and Islamic community. But when Tree of Life happened, the largest massacre and murder of Jewish people in American soil, the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh was the largest contributor, supporter, and representative of solidarity of faith. Alhamdulillah, beautiful. But where are you when Black people are being murdered in the streets? There's a rally Saturday for solidarity with Palestine. I want to go. I really want to go, because the Palestinian apartheid does not sit right with me. I lost sleep from Friday to Sunday about it. I've only seen a handful of those people come out to any issues when it pertains to Black people in this city. A handful. And I know them very well, and I know their hearts. This is where the divisiveness of grassroots organizing comes into it, because not everybody shows up organically and authentically on the same fronts. If I know there's something happening in the Latinx community in Pittsburgh, I know the first 5 people I'm gonna call. How can I help? Right? I know where I gotta be. Let's go. Right? We can show up organically in that sense. I might not be able to go to one cause, but One Hood's going to ask how we can send resources as a grass top organization. That's one of the biggest things of organizing, is learning how to let other people speak. I say that ironically, as I've been, here talking for 30 minutes straight, but I'll put it into a very tangible moment for me in this call is Dr. Cheryl Russell Hall, who's a part of one of our most well-received programs called What Black Pittsburgh Needs to Know. In the wake of learning that Pittsburgh was the most unlivable city, the worst city for Black women in America, we reached out to Dr. Cheryl Russell Hall specifically to get her insight on a show that we knew was going to reach thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people with our viewership. We couldn't just have a whole bunch of Black men there talking about what Black Pittsburgh needs to know about Pittsburgh when Pittsburgh is the worst city for a Black woman. We need a Black woman not only on the show, but moderating it, because her authentic lived experience is going to be the most accurate and the most important. That's what organizing is. When we flew to Louisville, Kentucky, right after Breonna Taylor was murdered, at the request of the family, we didn't come there for a press op. Oh, One Hood here. Let's flick out with Linda and everybody like that. Nah. Breonna Taylor's family recognized, and they knew Michelle Kenny, Antoine Rose II's mom. They knew her and said, hey, listen, we need One Hood out here. We love what One Hood does. It also helps that, July 15th is also Jasiri X Day in Louisville, Kentucky. I had no idea. That's my brother, and I didn't even know that. That also helped too. So we go there in solidarity. We ain't speak. We didn't speak. We came there because Breonna Taylor didn't get murdered in Pittsburgh. She got murdered in Louisville, Kentucky. But we organized with other organizations locally on that front for security purposes. We didn't take no money. We covered hotel rooms for people. We was patronizing businesses. We was doing all this to make sure that that community felt supported, because us as a Grassroots organization had resources and means to support other people. The same thing Until Freedom did, my son Linda and Tamika did when they got down there, is they came out in solidarity. What grass tops and grassroots organizations have in a difference is, like I said earlier in this, is just an access to resources. Every grass top organization starts as a grassroots organization. That doesn't mean they keep the same trajectory. One Hood started off as all Black men, now predominantly Black women. One Hood started as all Muslims. Now it's just me and Jasiri that are Muslim. It changes. That doesn't make us any less authentic. That means, like any good organization, you're going to change, develop, and grow to reflect the issues and the demographics around you. I'm going to use something in here with Tara being in here with social status. Social status, correct me if I'm wrong, is the only Black-owned business left on Penn Avenue next to Jamil's in East Liberty.
Hollins too, but he's very quiet. He stays in his building. Right.
So in an area of Pittsburgh that was almost 100% Black at one point, East Liberty has become the fastest gentrified neighborhood, I believe, in North America. There are 3 Black businesses left. Social status belongs to a niche area of fashion and I would say in this area, luxury. In this part of the pandemic, fashion is a luxury. Not everybody can afford, which is why I be thankful. I be like, every time I go into social status and I come out with a bag after I spend the bag, I be like, alhamdulillah, because I got the ability to do so, right? But they seen an opportunity to speak out and partner themselves with organizations such as One Hood, because they seen the community changing around them, but the future didn't look like them. And that doesn't mean social status came in as a grassroots organization, but they understand where they sit right now and the responsibility they have to the community they're relying upon patronage for. And that's also a very important aspect. We can also look at education in a grassroots setting. There's some people in here that want to run for school board that I've been advocating for to do so. That's a grassroots push. It doesn't get more grassroots to have a youth playing in the yard and then coming out and saying, I want to represent my children in the school board. It doesn't get more grassroots than that. school and education has a very unique place within community organizing, because the easiest place to find somebody is either going to be at the grocery store, the school, or the neighborhood hotspot. Those are the three easiest places to find somebody. If you got beef, you're going to pull up on someone in one of those three locations. Unfortunately, that's really just tends to be where it is. Where do a lot of issues manifest? In the schools. Teachers talk, admin talk. You know damn well students are going to talk, and the parents are going to talk. That's an amazing place to locate all community issues. And that's why a lot of things such as voting, immunizations, food drives get held at schools, because that's one of the most accessible points. What One Hood did was we appeared in education. And I said earlier on here, we appear in arts, education, and activism. What we do with education is we run in-school and out-of-school programming at certain schools and also universities around so media literacy, and now diversity inclusion trainings, also culturally responsive pedagogy, and African American studies. All of these things talk to the community at large. And what we do with this aspect of community organizing is we're able to pull in people who aren't necessarily activists in the traditional or in the popular sense, and allow them to operate in a medium that's very comfortable for them. Anybody that's in this call has an idea of what activism is. And there are so many facets to it. It's not just one linear thing. We say at One Hood because, you know, we're all pretty much rappers and artists, myself included. Be active through your craft. That's where your activism should manifest, is through your craft. I said in the rap, I like to use my fashion as a faction of my activism. You know, that makes some people real upset when me and Jasiri be coming out places and we be fresh, right? We like clothes. I like fashion and sneakers, right? It's my thing. I kind of use that. I buy clothes from Black designers. You know, a lot of my clothes that I wear have political messages on there. I just bought like 5 shirts from Social Status. One was defund the police, one or pull the plug on police funding. One was Proud Black. One was a Muhammad Ali shirt. These are Black organizations with political messages, right? From a fashion boutique that's Black owned in a neighborhood that used to be 100% Black. That's how I use my fashion as a faction of my activism, right? That's just one small thing. I ain't say it just because it rhyme. I said it because it's facts. What you can look at this is say activists become this 2020 hot button topic because of the presidency and everything that, you know, Georgia was able to turn blue for the first time since 1971 because of activists, political activists that operate politically. What people think about activists is that everybody has to be out here on the front line. But if we all activists and we all protesting and marching and getting arrested, who's going to bail us out? Ain't nobody left if we all in jail. They say you can't arrest all of us. There's about 2.5 million people, Black people in jail right now that will disagree with you. We need lawyers that are activists. We need educators that are activists. We need artists that are activists. We need politicians that are activists. And that might sound like an oxymoron, but that's a fact. We need parents to be activists in their households with their children. My father was a Black Panther. My father seen and experienced things that he wished that I never did. My dad moved us from a city setting to a suburban area in order to an attempt to shield us from, I don't know, whatever he thought was going to happen in the city that ended up happening in the suburbs anyway. What people don't talk about, the downside of activism and community organizing, whether it's on a grass top or a grassroots level. I mentioned earlier in here that community organizers differ from politicians because we don't have security details. I'm a bad motherfucker, right? I've been practicing martial arts for 30 years. I'm an undefeated boxer. I can't box a bullet. And the thing that comes with community organizing and activism are death threats. And sometimes those death threats turn into actions of death. As we've seen in Ferguson and so many other cities across the country, we don't have traces of activists anymore. They just disappeared. That's the scary part of community organizing. It's a very real possibility that anytime we come out here, this could be our last time out. Police love killing organizers. Police love killing activists. White supremacists love killing activists. We've seen this nationwide. With community organizing being what it is right now, such a hot button topic, virtually every election in the country has mentioned it at some point or is pulling upon community organizers. I would like everybody in this call to think about the pressure that rests upon the leaders of the community, not the clergy people, not, the people who have notoriety, real community leaders, such as the person, as Mr. Jenkins at like the bodega, right? You know that man. That's a real community leader right there, because everybody know that man. Something happened to him, there's going to be a vigil or something, and people are going to come out. It's not necessarily what happens to Farooq in one hood in Pittsburgh. It's what happens to, the parents at the PTA meeting when they find out that the anti-blackness being taught in the curriculum is permeating into their household. And then they come out at the PTA meeting and they become silenced or dragged out by the police. These aren't just like things I'm pulling out of the air. These are real things that happen every day. With anti-Asian hate, stopping anti-Asian hate, we look at this and we say, oh, this is just a fly-by-night thing. Asian people are just experiencing something for the first time in their lives. What do they have to be upset at? Well, I don't know. Sometimes some white supremacist has a bad day and kills 8 people. Where's the community then? That's what we have to look at community organizing from in this standpoint. And where grassroots and grasstops organizations can come together is a means of understanding a solidarity. I got another friend on this call, Farooq Al-Said, who is an amazing person, who is one of these people that works within a mayoral office and is a liaison for Spanish-speaking people and Black and brown people in her community of, I'm not going to put all her information out there like that, but she's a dope individual who came to Pittsburgh on a tour to see how things happen here and seeing how fucked up it was here, and took some of that back to her location and decided to change it. I don't expect, man, Laura got responsibilities at home. I don't expect to see Laura out here raising her fists and be, throwing bottles through people's windshields and shit like that. Nah, she ain't got time for that. But she's in a position of influence. Same thing. Imagine seeing Tara out here where you can access her at social status every day out here setting cop cars on fire. That don't make no sense. But there can be homogeny here. There can be, an overlap of all these 3 fields that exist in this area. I'm going to tie this up with a nice bow and leave it open for questions or comments or anything like that. With community organizing, I said at the very beginning of this call, most people get an idea of it from trying to start a pickup game in primary school. It shouldn't be any different now as trying to get people to play a game of tag with you, to concentrate on an issue. And the biggest part of it is, once you organize those people, learning to step away from it and let them talk about the issues that speak the loudest for them, right? If you're a person of privilege and power, just because you organize, it doesn't mean you have to be the front of the movement. And just because you're subjugated by a system of white supremacy, that doesn't mean you have to stay in that role perennially. And you can make organization for your community as organic as you possibly can and envision it in a way that it's going to only in perpetuity develop your community on how you see fit. Local elections, school boards, things like that. That's the way you can really community organize. If you ain't got it in you, man, listen, I used to be someone who's like, I'm not voting for shit. Ballot or bullet, yeah, okay, fuck all that. This year I voted for the first time ever. Some of you may have seen me on Gayle King, right? I was on there looking, right? My beard was glistening. The oils was looking right. I talked about voting for the first time. I still don't believe in the democratic process for the presidential election. But these local elections, man, a man like me got registered. I'm out here now. They was chatting about, Tara, they was chatting about me running for Mayor Wilkinsburg. I was I was like, yo, I got convictions. They ain't letting me in no mayoral office. But I say all that to say, these are ways that you can introduce yourself to community organizing at a very accessible level to those who aren't really interested in getting out here in the streets.
Well, thank you for all of that. And
Thank you.
For giving more context to, I wasn't clear on the differences between grassroots and grass tops. So having a better understanding of that, I thank you. I'll be happy to take that with me.
Absolutely.
We spoke earlier on about how, neither of us are Pittsburgh natives, and you spent so much time in other cities and other countries. How does organizing there differ from Pittsburgh? And how do the issues in Pittsburgh compare not only to the issues for Black women in particular in other cities, but also like other countries? Because I think a primary topic in Pittsburgh in particular is, how it's killing Black women to live here. Right. Like we cannot survive here. So in your experience, how is that differed from issues that you're familiar with in other places?
That's a very interesting question, because one of the areas that became popular over the summer through the Black Lives Matter protest was London, England. And that was a city where I spent a lot of time. It's very interesting because London is I don't know why Siri keeps popping up on my Mac. London is a city that is, very much like Toronto, very much like New York City. It's the globe in a city. And a lot of the times these neighborhoods tend to speak out for their issues, and not everybody really comes together to galvanize. England's civil rights, Canada's civil rights, whereas they tend to be optically more inclusive areas, are a lot farther behind than the States are in terms of expressing civil rights and expressing human rights and being able to take to the streets and galvanize. We've seen even with Meghan Markle and Piers Morgan, England has a very difficult time speaking about race because everybody's so posh and all of them things in it. Like everybody is still thinking that it's 19th century or something like that, where the Queen is still, this royal higher was just a figurehead. People in England are very far behind the rest of the world. Canada is not much farther behind than them, or not much farther ahead than England is. What I will say that differentiates the two of them is within specifically Toronto and London, you have a lot of people. I used to live in England, bro. That's why I can speak the King's English with the best of them, man. Indistinguishable. It pains me to speak American English. Canada, like Toronto and London, have a lot of first gen and fresh off the boat people who tend to not get involved with matters of race and politics because it really makes your quality of life a lot more difficult. And I know, Laura is from the Dominican Republic. She can kind of attest to that. Like, your parents really don't want you coming out too outspoken because it makes their quality of life difficult. It's like, we brought you to the States not to be outlandish and loud and shit. We brought you to the States to assimilate. So that's one of the main things that America has in its favor for Black women's rights, for Black Lives Matter, just for protests in general. We are a country of immigrants, and we're a nation of people who have come here and had enough time to like have generations of people come up in this struggle, and those generations are speaking out. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. It was a very broad question. And I'm also very interested, because although we did neighbor, Buffalo, my experiences there with race and everything, I think they're probably vastly different from yours, having grown up primarily in Canada. And I'm a bit familiar with Canada's very tenuous relationship with Indigenous populations, but I don't know much about Black populations in Canada. Would you like to speak to that?
Absolutely. So my father's father was Black and grew up on a Mohawk reservation in Quebec. I don't know much about that. I just know that in terms of the lineage, My grandfather was born in 1900s. That means his father was a slave. So I'm only 2 generations removed from slavery. As Black people pertain to Canada, you only got there one or two ways. You either got there by a boat or you followed Harriet to Canada. That's the only way Black people got to Canada. The Underground Railroad, which a lot of people don't talk about, ended in Canada, ended in Freetown, Nova Scotia, which is now called Halifax, Nova Scotia. And you have what is called Scotian Black, which is what I come from, which is Black from slavery. Your people either escaped slavery or, finessed a way into Canada when it was still called Dominion and just kind of set up residency there, or, they came on a boat, whether from Jamaica, from, Africa, something like that. Canada's relationship with indigenous populations is abhorrent at the very best of times. You have probably Canada's greatest mistake, since Canada didn't actively participate in, Scotian Black, that's what we're called. Since Canada didn't actively participate in the slave trade as it was outlawed, that's how the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were created, were to escort escaped Black people or free Black people back to the American soil that they came from. They worked in conjunction with the U.S. Marshals. That's where the RCMP's history came from. It's no different than police officers. Canada's relationship with the indigenous population is exactly like the States. They murdered as many as they could and placed the rest of them on reservations. Now, the Canadian reservations in Canada, the First Nations area, have sovereign land, much like they do in the States. But if you go to Canadian sovereign land, you're looking for trouble. They have the authority to execute Canadian police officers as an act of war. Do they? The last time it happened was 1991 in the Oka crisis in Quebec. That is July 13th, 13th of July, 1991. There was a land dispute that made the cover of Time magazine. There was a Mohawk soldier and a Canadian soldier faced off in opposition. If you Google Oka crisis, OKA, Oka crisis, it was in Oka, Quebec. It was the last time there was something like that, where the First Nations people used their ability to fight against the Canadian armed forces and the RCMP and the local law enforcement. It actually was technically a small war. And that was when my father left Canada and never came back. So that's kind of what the relationship is like. With Black people are, systemically oppressed in Toronto. Toronto is the fastest growing and one of the largest cities in the world. Black people are going to be subjugated there the same way they are in Missouri, Miami, London, Palestine. It doesn't matter. Unfortunately, we get the same treatment globally.
I appreciate you answering my questions. I want to be cognizant of everyone else's time. I could listen to Farooq talk all day. I got to hear him talk about fighting on Sunday, another really interesting thing that he's into. And I don't get tired of hearing him speak. So I do want to leave space for everybody else to ask questions. I've
seen in the chat, Mikhail said Quebec is so anti-Black, 100%. Quebec, I was just talking to Tyler about this today. Quebec is one of the most white supremacist nations in the world. Quebec has a very interesting history with Canada as it's the wild card. Quebec is like Ohio is in the American electoral process. Quebec can swing either way, and they have their own voting party called Bloc Québécois, where I say white supremacist nation, Hell's Angels, the biker gang, was formed in Quebec, Canada. And they are one of the largest terrorist organizations in the continental United States. They're homegrown, the domestic terrorists, which the Department of Justice in the States just testified that they are the largest threat to American security. Quebec is extremely anti-Black. To be Black in Quebec is not to be Black in France. Whereas in France, you can say, I've become naturalized, therefore I am a Black French person or a French Black person. In Quebec, you are a less desirable. If you're a Haitian, if you're African, if you're Caribbean, if you are just, Scotian Black living in Quebec, you go outside of Quebec City or Montreal, you are reminded very quickly that this is not your country. So yeah, I just wanted to say that I seen Mikhail say that in the chat. But, this portion right here, if anybody has questions or comments, this is what I'm here for. Italy, yes, Italy is very anti-Black. And Italy is a very interesting case because you could hit Africa with a rock from the bottom of Italy. And there's a lot of anti-Blackness there because of Morocco, because of Algiers, because of Tunisia, because of that whole guy Hannibal coming in there with a lot of elephants and killing a lot of people. I don't know. I think that left a couple hundred years worth of anxiety with the Italians. But and also because of Catholicism has been historically anti-Black, and very if you look at what Catholicism has done with a lot of Black people, I'm not sitting here dismissing Christianity or Catholicism by far. I just think the connotation with a lot of people is that they have colonization when Catholics are mentioned. And that's something that the Catholic Church has had struggles with atoning for. So your anti-Blackness comes from there in a lot of areas. I mean, I wouldn't listen. I would tell you this. The globe has an infatuation with Black people. Black people, I say this all the time. 2020 was not only one of the most important years in human history, but it was one of the first times where the entire globe stopped what they were doing to see what Black people were saying. It's one of the only times. So if you get an opportunity to travel abroad, you know what I mean? Each one teach one to the extent of one's knowledge. But, just keep in mind that, we are the global majority. Anywhere you go in the world, it's going to look like this call. It's going to look a lot less like your classroom. You know what I mean? Presuming that you went to an all-white school. If anybody else has any questions, by all means, throw them at me. For the election on Tuesday, I'm interested in gaining, but this whole website doesn't use the word Black once, which is concerning. How do you think, though, the severe limits of representation of politics? Oh, man, that was a hell of a question. I want to first say we're pretty much internally, we're thinking Ed Gainey is going to win the mayoral race and Bill Peduto will be out. I don't think. Yeah, right. Let's hope. Bill comes from a political family, though, so he might pull in like a last minute thing. The lack of the usage of the word Black. Jasiri and Miracle are better political commentators than I am. I tend to look at it as more of an obvious statement. People will automatically assume Ed Gainey's the Black mayor because he came from Homewood, which is a Black neighborhood, and he sounds and talks the way he does. If you ever hear Ed talk, Ed sound like a preacher, right? That man sound like, he's a man of the cloth, little more T.D. Jakes than, Kwame Kirkpatrick. But I don't have a problem with Ed not using the word Black in his website. I didn't know that because as long as I've been active in Pittsburgh as a person that's lived here, I've seen Ed virtually everywhere in Black spaces. The community knows Ed. Win, lose, or draw, the community will always, what Dr. Russell just said. Ed has always shown up in Black spaces, and he's kind of always been the Black state representative, the Blackest one, him and Summer Lee. So I don't really have a problem with it because if he gets elected for the next 4 years, he's going to be the Black mayor of Pittsburgh. And what's interesting right now is we have actually Vice covering the election here in Pittsburgh because for the first time, possibly in the country history, all of the contributing factors to the mayoral election are Black issues. And you have a Black mayor, a Black candidate that actually might win the seat of mayor, which is very interesting, given everything that I've just talked about with this call about Pittsburgh. That's why Vice is here covering that right now, because Pittsburgh has once again become a national crisis and a national news headline for how poorly Black people are treated here. So to answer your question, I really don't have that big of a problem with Ed not using Black there. Is because, he's come out so much for the Black community and we know him. So, you know what I mean? With Obama, Obama was a specific case of he never ran on a racial platform. Obama was the most milquetoast example of racial identity politics ever. Like Obama was Bill Cosby in the White House. I just said this on my show last night. Barack Obama talked to black people like we were stupid. Pull yourself up from your bootstraps, and I did it. Why can't you? It's like, nigga, because we ain't had the same fucking resources you did. That's why. Like, you grew up in fucking Hawaii with a well-off mom. Like, don't chat to me about them shit. Like, you came to Chicago, nigga. Like, you wasn't born there. It's not like you came from, like, you know, South Side of, like, Cabrini Green or some shit. Nigga, you grew up in Hawaii. Shut the fuck up. But, like, Obama was really, really disappointing. And for his wife, God bless Michelle, God bless both of them, to come out and say, I'm scared of what my children are going to experience in terms of racism. If only you were in a position of power. If only you were the first and second most important and powerful people in the world at some point that could have facilitated some change. Damn, what a missed opportunity that was. Sorry, I'll rant about Obama. I'll get out here. I'll say some wild shit. I'll say some wild shit. If anybody else has any questions, I would love to answer. If not, I'm totally cool with that also. It's good to hear. What's that? Random. Dr. Umar Johnson. The Prince of Pan-Africanism. Big Papa in the house. I think Dr. Umar is extremely intelligent. I think at this point, Dr. Umar should accept his role as an internet meme and just be a personality. I think he would accomplish a lot more. But Dr. Umar is picking fights with Kevin Samuels on YouTube, on Instagram and everything. I'm excited for that because that's exactly the fight I want to see in 2021 is Dr. Umar versus Kevin Samuels.
He's on those brunch boots.
Well, they got $20,000 for brunch boots, eh? Yo, when I don't know if anybody on this call has seen Kevin Samuels' yearbook picture, I was like, I knew it. He was in the Glee Club. Kevin Samuels is a professional bully at this point. Dr. Umar isn't far behind. But I think Dr. Umar is an extremely poignant speaker. I just think that it's very alarming to me that he's always by himself. I think that speaks very loudly. The fact that you see me, you see Jasiri. You see One Hood, you see about 100 of us in One Hood t-shirts. Who's with Dr. Umar? What points of his do you agree with, if any? Okay. I'm going to bake this very quick because I don't want to turn this into the Dr. Umar segment. I think Dr. Umar is accurate in the fact that Black people need to galvanize a lot stronger behind Black issues, not when it's just white people killing us. I agree with that 100%. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. I just think it needs to happen a little bit more authentically. I also agree with a lot of his stances on mental health because Dr. Umar really was one of the first pro-Black brothers out here that was masculine talking about the importance of mental health, being a mental health professional. If you go back to one of his Breakfast Club interviews, he talks about how the white power structure, the white supremacist power structure will effectively call pedophilia a mental disorder, therefore making it more acceptable. And a lot of people is like, oh, it's never going to happen. A couple years down the line, here we are now, pedophilia in a lot of circles is considered a mental health crisis and not a sexual deviancy. Dr. Umar called that. And I remember he caught a lot of flack for that. And now it's literally being wrote into mental health manuals. I don't know the name for all the manuals and everything like that. It's not my field. But pedophilia is something that's becoming generally more acceptable as a treatable disease and something that should be forgiven. Tell that to the parents. But I'm with Dr. Umar in that sense. But there's plenty more that I don't agree with. Dr. Umar is in a category of hotepery where I think all them niggas think Africa is just Egypt. and it's just pyramids all throughout Africa. Like there wasn't like Africa is not the most diverse continent on the planet, so not every building looked like a pyramid. I'm sorry, not everybody walking around in Africa with ankhs and eyes of Ra and Horus. There's a less Egypt. There's a lot more to Africa than Egypt. That's my stance on that. Cheers to Dr. Umar. Yeah, you know what I mean? You know, you just kind of take the good with the bad. You know what I mean? No one's perfect. I'm sure that if you ask somebody what they thought about Farooq Al-Said in a certain platform, they go say some wild shit. They'd be like, oh man, you know, I heard he used to shoot people and rob people. Why are we listening to him? You know what I mean? So I mean, there's gonna be people that say things about everybody. So, you know, whatever. But I think if that's it, I think, you know, if you're not opposed to it, I'm gonna call it here. We're at time. We're about 8:20.
Yeah, I'm happy to wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And
absolutely, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, sharing space with Farooq and just being present for what he has to say. I appreciate you all. We're gonna continue to be social programming. Hopefully, continue to work with One Hood, a really important community organization in Pittsburgh, which Farooq beautifully spoke to. So once again, thank you guys so much. I hope everybody has a great evening and stay safe.
Absolutely. You know, Eid Mubarak to those who celebrate. You know, today's the first day of Eid. You know, again, thank you all for coming in and spending your time with me, hearing me ramble about things. Thank you so much. Tyler, I'll be linking you soon. Tara, I will see you tomorrow because I got to come in and get some shorts. Laura, gracias. Yeah, I'll talk to everybody soon. Dr. Russell, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Peace.